Hey guys, what's going on? NGS back again for another video. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. Instead of just talking about this news article I'm about to feature, I wanted to do a little bit more and actually give my thoughts on something that's been going on in the industry for, I'd say, the past year or two. And it's definitely evident when you hear the comments from the person in the article that I'm about to address. Now, this article comes from the CEO, founder, and current president of Crytek, Cevat Yerli. If that's how I'm pronouncing his name, good. If that's not how to pronounce his name, well, let's just move on with our lives. Cevat Yerli is extremely disappointed in the reviews that were given for Crytek's latest entry in their sci-fi futuristic first-person shooter franchise, Crysis 3. Crysis 3 is currently sitting at a 78% out of 100, and this is combining all of the various reviews from various media outlets. Now, first things first, why is he disappointed in the reviews? Because when you look at a 78 out of 100, that's not bad at all. It really isn't. Two things I can attribute to this. Number one, and I think this is the most obvious out of them all, when a person spends this much time, effort, resources into a project, it becomes their baby. So they would expect that with all this effort put into it, it should be received as such, getting numerous honors, top of the game. Number two, this is something that has permeated the mainstream gaming culture, especially those who like to dabble in the review side of things. If a game gets lower than a 9 or a 10, then the game is considered irrelevant. The game is not good, the game sucks. To address those people right there, since when is a score like a 7.5 out of 10 really a bad thing? When you get down to it at the end of the day, of course these are reviews. There have been reviews for games that I personally love that people have given scores that I wholeheartedly disagree with. Now here's the difference though. While there have been reviews that I have disagreed with, the scores they've given, I still liked the reviews. Why? Because if they were able to give relevant points, issues that are valid, then personally, I think the review is just. However, on the opposite end, if you had another person who gave the game the same score, but they gave little to no reasoning as to why, yes, that is what we consider a bad review. At the end of the day, whether you choose to filter the good reviews giving bad scores, but for legitimate reasons, or the bad reviews giving bad scores for no reasons, it all comes down to the opinions. Like it or not, every asshole has one. Cevat Yerli attributes the reviews for Crysis 3 receiving lower scores than the previous two entries in the series to gamer fatigue. Now this is actually pretty interesting. When you look at all of the bigwig developers, heads of these companies who come out and address damage control as to why the game did not sell, or why the game did not get the praise that they wanted, usually it's because they think the reviewer doesn't understand their game, they think they're biased.
Why in the world are you having a guy reviewing Final Fantasy, reviewing Gears of War? He's just not gonna understand it one bit.
Those type of people. But it was interesting to see a different take on this. Until you listen to Cevat Yerli's comments. He attributes Crysis 3's lower scores to gamer fatigue because he feels that gamers are tired of the current generation hardware. People who are under the impression that with the next generation of consoles, we will see a boom in new ideas, a boom in creativity, a boom in just brand new games in general, and that this generation is limiting the developers' ideas because of the hardware. There is some reasoning behind developers being limited by today's current technology because this technology is, frankly, almost a decade old, especially if you consider the Xbox 360. So, for them to create these big, massive games, they don't want to be limited by their hardware. There is some validity to that. However, on the opposite end, these same people who say they want to create bigger and better ideas, the past couple of games that they've been churning out have been the same rinse and repeat first-person shooters. And I'm not just trying to gang up on first-person shooter here. There are plenty of developers who use this excuse. Plenty of them saying, we're limited by the hardware, yet you're making the exact same game every single 2 years. So how exactly are you limited by the hardware? It all comes down to the people behind the game, the people who are able to churn out these fantastic, interesting experiences that gamers give their attention to. And the reasoning as to why Crysis 3 is not getting the reception you think it should deserve, Mr. Yerli, may be due to the fact that people are bored of the series. What is it? A first-person shooter. Those things have been ablaze this generation in particular. Left, right, and center, we've seen first-person shooters come from companies you would never expect release a first-person shooter. Maybe gamers are tired. Maybe they need a break from it. Maybe they wanted to go away for a generation and then come back with something breathtaking. Maybe that's the case. Or maybe it's not that they're tired of first-person shooters, they're just tired of the rinse and repeat first-person shooters. See, that's the difference here. It's not the genre that's the problem, it's the developers behind the genre who aren't doing anything to move the franchise, move the genre forward. You see, that's the issue, because at the end of the day, of course, we're all gonna run out of ideas at some point or another. In this situation, everything's been done, you can't make something new. That is true, but why not make a spin on an old idea? Why don't you do that? Why don't you breathe new life into it? Why don't you do that? Wouldn't that solve your problems? Wouldn't that get people interested? No. But you look at Crysis 3, and Crysis 3 looks almost indifferent to Crysis 2, except adding a bow and adding a couple of new gameplay mechanics. But really, that's not enough to sell a person on the game, especially a game that people weren't even that interested in to begin with. It's because you look at from Crysis 1 to Crysis 2, there was obviously a lot of hype. Number one, it was a brand new Crysis game in how many years? Number two, it was coming to consoles for the very first time. But then you go to Crysis 2 to Crysis 3, and it's just like, what, 2 years, and it looks almost indifferent? Come on now. If it really was the hardware that is restricting these great ideas from prospering, then why is the indie community thriving? All across platforms, PSN, Steam, Xbox Live, and now Nintendo's Wii U, the indie game community is a flourish, with new ideas, new innovations, based on old concepts. And those are made with limited resources, a limited amount of people, a smaller budget, yet their ideas, the games they make, are something gamers are going to remember this generation, over something like a quasi-open world, linear campaign, first-person shooter, featuring a bow and arrow. Maybe it's the people behind this that are the issue and not the games. In regards to the hardware side of things, if next generation will really offer you new ideas, aren't you going to be stuck in the same situation that you are in now a couple years down the road? Because these consoles are, as Cevat Yerli put it, limited. That's their point. So while it may be good the first 2-3 years you're banging out these amazing titles, aren't you going to be in the same situation another 2-3 years from that point on? You're going to be limited by the hardware. Now, what, are we going to complain about this in 2018? Are we really going to do that again? Come on now, it's ridiculous. You just need to work to innovate these titles instead of staying stuck in the past and staying stuck with this mindset. I definitely do think there is some form of gamer fatigue going on this generation. Because if you look at it like this, not only is this the longest gaming generation to date, we've seen some of the most longest franchises start this generation or get revived this generation and still continue on to this point, releasing yearly iterations. I think gamers have just gotten tired of it. They've just gotten their fill of it and they just want it to go away for a little while, or maybe they just want to play something else. And I think it's definitely evident with Call of Duty. Now, hear me out before I continue this, people. No, I am not saying Call of Duty is going to die. The next iteration is not going to sell. But when you look at the amount of people playing the latest iteration, Black Ops 2, as opposed to the other games in the series, you can definitely see that even though the game has made more money, the attach rate of people continuing to play it just isn't there. People just aren't that interested in Call of Duty. Look at the DLCs for Black Ops 2, the Season Pass, and the just DLC in general, according to Activision, is underperforming. Now, why is that? Maybe people have finally hit their stride for Call of Duty? Maybe that's the case? The next Call of Duty that comes out, of course, is going to be a system seller, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's going to be as big as Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare 3, you get what I'm saying. I think it's going to sell, but it's just not going to be there. Maybe Call of Duty needs a reboot of some sort. But I think gamers are just tired playing the same thing over and over and over again. Maybe it's gamers wising up and getting into new franchises. Maybe that's why they don't want to spend their money. Whereas a couple of years ago, all they really had to play, the uninformed gamer mind you, were these big budget titles. Maybe they're getting into the smaller stuff. Maybe they're exploring the downloadable services of PSN and Xbox Live. Maybe they've gotten into PC gaming and seen all of the free-to-play titles on there. There are many variables here, but to attribute it to only gamer fatigue, I don't really buy that. Anyway, what do you guys think of this? Sound off in the comments below. I'm GS signing out, and like always, I will catch you guys later. Peace.